So if I may invite my colleagues from Novartis, Jardin Motor Group, and Legal and General, Tariq, Philippe, and Amanda, to please turn on your cameras and unmute yourselves and join us here today for our LiveTiles customer panel. So delighted to have you guys with us. Bringing together three digital workplace leaders from the worlds of healthcare, financial services, and automotive retail. Three leaders in communications and digital transformation who've been deeply involved in getting real value in return from the digital workplace platforms, breaking down silos and delivering best-in-class employee experience, and even reimagining the workplace and its role in the future of work. So it's my pleasure to welcome Amanda Mogan-Wilson, Tariq Moanah, and Philip Martucci to the LiveTilesX conference today. I'd like to kick things off, guys, by inviting each of you to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your organization and your role therein. Amanda, if I could start with you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Head of Communications and Engagement at Jardin Motors Group. Jardin Motors represents 16 of the world's most premium luxury car manufacturers across 56 retail locations in the UK. My role is both internal and external communication, which includes heading up and overseeing our branding, our employer branding, and our employee experiences.
Thanks, Amanda. Phil?
Yeah, hi everyone. Good to be with you today. My name is Phil Martucci and I work for Novartis. It's a company based out of Basel in Switzerland. You may know it. It's a global healthcare pharmaceutical company. We do business in 155 countries around the world, and our medicines, our products, touch about 750 million patients every year. So it's a huge company, and we're all reminded every day about really the goals that we have for our patients. I'm glad you said reimagining the workplace, Paul. Our vision at Novartis is to reimagine medicine, and it's our North Star on how we do business and how we help patients' lives. My role is the head of enterprise content and channels. So what that means essentially is for all of our associates around the world, we have 110,000 of them. My team's responsibility is what our employees see, the messages they see and hear, and how they see and hear those messages, so the channels that we use. So that's my role, and yeah, I'm happy to be here today.
Excellent. We'd really like to dive deeper into that with you later on in the panel around those challenges of engagement in such a large and a diverse workforce. Tariq, if you can tell us a little bit about Legal and General and your role therein, please.
Yes, hello. Yeah, I'm Tariq. I'm the digital product lead at Legal and General, who are one of the largest financial services providers in the UK. We also service global territories as well in the US, Europe, and Asia. We focus on a multitude of financial services products, so everything from investment products, mortgage, pension, insurance, and we also take that capital and we invest it into society, which is a concept we call inclusive capitalism, and we use that to fund other parts of our business, such as homes building, where we have a large affordable homes company, and also modular housing, which is a new concept in the UK to build housing flat pack essentially. So we're doing a lot in the economy and trying to keep it circular and using that investment. My role as a product lead is to think about employee experience very much the way we think about our customer experience, and is to build digital products in the same way we do for customers, but internalizing that and talking about how we build products for employees. So what we want to do at Legal and General is take all of these business areas, these financial services or individual companies that form part of the group, and create one consistent employee experience for us, because we know that investing in the employee experience means better returns for our customers.
Thanks a million. And before we dive into the conversation, I'd just like to encourage everybody as well who's joined us this morning to seek out the questions chat box, and please pop your questions in there. And we're delighted to put some time at the end of the talk for the panel to address them. So really, just to get us started, just like to zoom out a little bit and try and understand the context in your different organizations in terms of the digital workplace. You know, the challenges that you're really there to address, the key challenges in your organizations, and also, of course, how that has changed in 2020. I guess if we had this discussion 12 months ago, it would potentially be a very different discussion to what we're having now, because there's been such a rate of acceleration. But maybe, Amanda, if I just start with you, and then I'll go to Philip and Tariq after that. But by all means, join in as we go along.
So yeah, I think you're right. Definitely, things would look different if COVID hadn't have hit. That's for sure. One of the things that happened within our organisation, we already had a digital transformation roadmap. It was outlined, and it was looking to be sort of a 2 to 3 year project in all its areas. What we took the decision of was actually, while our businesses were temporarily closed earlier on in the year, as we were following government guidelines, we decided to accelerate that change and make things happen quicker. We had quite a complex tech stack, so representing so many different brands, different manufacturers. We had a lot of disparate systems and platforms. We had something like over 140 different systems. So we needed to refine that. We needed to think about what is the Jardin Motors overlay to that experience, whether it's internal to our colleagues and external to our customers. And we went through a refinement of that. But what it's also meant in terms of the digital workplace is we've changed our way of working. So we have a real focus on inclusion and diversification within Jardin Motors, trying to bring new talent into the industry. And one of the ways of which we've been able to do that really successfully in the last 9 months is to introduce flexible working practices, which means that colleagues now are working from home more. I know a lot of companies are doing that. But when you do that, the question really is about what is your culture? How do you maintain that culture that we've been working so hard to build up over the last 5 to 6 years under the CEO that's in place now? How do we do that when you have remote working, when you have people who aren't physically in the business together in the way that they used to be? And even when our colleagues are in the dealerships physically together, they're socially distanced, our teams are in social bubbles as part of our COVID practices, so they're not physically, having conversations face to face in the way they used to. So technology has been really critical in helping to overcome some of those challenges. But it's been a positive year in that respect, and I think we've accelerated much further forward than we perhaps thought we could have, and achieved so much more. So it has been a good thing for us.
And later in the discussion, I'd love to find out more then about how you actually manage them. They're huge challenges, cultural, as you mentioned, but also the different workplace experiences that people are having, the different roles that they have, the physical disconnection. So we'll definitely come back to that topic. Phil, at Novartis, you talked in the beginning there about the very large workforce, the disconnected channels, the different challenges that you wanted solved with the digital workplace. Can you just give us some insights from behind the curtain peek into that world?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we have lots of different employees across the world, and they all have different roles. I mean, we have a large chunk of employees, of course, who are office workers, desk workers, who are on their laptops all day, but we also have several thousand, 20 to 30,000 that are in the field, right, who are selling our products, promoting our products. And then we also have about 20 to 30,000 people who are in manufacturing, making our medicines. And each of these different groups, they consume messages and media in different ways. And for sure, the coronavirus pandemic has definitely accelerated the introduction of some tools. I'll use Microsoft Teams as an example. We were in a pilot, essentially, with just small groups using it. We were slated to launch it fully at the end of this year, but we moved it up into March of this year, which has been a huge boon for the company. I mean, it's allowed our office workers to be at home and to be able to stay connected. But one of the things in particular, agnostic of the pandemic, is how we were siloed before. We had an intranet, actually it was nine different intranets. So depending on who you were or what part of the business you were in, what intranet you saw when you launched your browser was very different than someone else. And what we found is that there was not one consistent experience for everyone. Yes, they had very targeted, relevant local information, but they were missing that larger strategy of Novartis. How are we reaching patients? How are we achieving our objectives as a company, right? How are we improving societies? And that wasn't a consistent message coming across. So we said we really needed to get behind that. I want someone in China who's in sales to know exactly what a scientist or a lab worker in the US is seeing. I want them to connect, right? So this was a key part of what we were trying to do. And for us, it was a multi-year project, 2 years. But now for the first time, we have one place for our employees to get that high level strategic information, but also a very relevant for the individual experience. And it's something that we thought very long and hard about. If you can imagine, essentially, a giant company like this, you think that we have everything all together and everything works well. And it's just not the case, right? I think with a large company comes more complexity. We have lots of systems that are very specialized, and we have a lot of really amazing, talented people who think of something they want to do, how it will provide value, and they go after it. But what happens is over time, it becomes really fragmented. So we knew at the first instance, our focus should be on the audience, our employees. And they were having this great experience outside of work. They're having social media, the things that they follow on Twitter, on Instagram, they're really relevant. They're things that they want to see. And then they were coming to work and they were getting a different experience, one that wasn't as synced up. So we said, let's flip it. Let's make it match. Yeah, let's have the employee experience match what they're having outside of the walls. So that's what we set out to do. Yeah.
So really uniting the workforce, if you like, through employee experience and strengthening that employee advocacy, I guess, at the end of the day, and giving the consumer grade experience in the workplace.
Exactly.
Tariq, in Legal in General, and you mentioned there, I mean, Legal in General is involved also in many diverse businesses. So the challenge that you had, and it's very specific to your role as well, about delivering that really exquisite digital employee experience. Can you just give us some insights into what that's like in Legal in General and where you're going with that?
Yeah, I think it's, I echo so much of what Philip just said. Actually, it's uncanny. I think we've shared very similar challenges. Likewise, we have so many employee personas, from manufacturing through to office workers, trade analysts and things like that. And it's really difficult for someone to have the same experience depending on where you land in the organization or how you come into the organization. I think before the pandemic, we'd always set out to have this one L&G, Legal in General, what we call the one Legal in General concept of an employee. And it was a chance for us to use the digital workplace as a vehicle for our employee value proposition to say, let's reset, what working for Legal in General means, use the digital workplace as a vehicle to communicate that, but also to stop duplication. We had a situation which is starting to resolve itself now, is where we were doing multiple bits of work duplicating work essentially across the organization. So say one business division would want to release a chatbot using one particular platform. We find out that there's another chatbot platform also being brought into the organization. So you end up with 3 or 4 different platforms doing the same thing. So that sort of duplication could only be resolved through centralizing through a digital workplace, so you can share that knowledge and transfer, which wouldn't be able to have happened physically. I guess one of the biggest challenges is the whole concept of being product led. It's quite a forward-thinking mindset. You get it mainly in the startup world or in some digital hubs within your organization, where you try and be product led and you think about building products, as Philip mentioned, consumer grade, what you experience outside of work, how do you bring that mindset internally? And I think that's my main challenge has been for the last 2 years, is trying to get people on board with that idea of design thinking for your employees, building, innovating, testing and learning for the employee. And that's something that's accelerated massively during the pandemic because everyone was thrown into ambiguity. So the people who were very hesitant of change and were hesitant to release things that they weren't quite sure if they're going to work or not were thrown into situations where they had to just release it, see what happens, and it's got us really comfortable with that. So we're capitalizing off that now to try and build more of a test and learn culture.
So something you've all mentioned is this acceleration. COVID has really been a catalyst for change. Everybody's projects have moved forward, fast forwarded. We're seeing that right across our customer base, where timelines of 2-3 years for digital transformation are suddenly becoming 2-3 months. So we're going to have interesting discussions in the near future about how that was possible. But I'd be really interested, Amanda, to know in terms of, because you mentioned that you had a digital transformation plan in place, it was massive acceleration. How do priorities change, or what surfaced to the top as really key and crucial in your experience this year?
I think we'd already done a lot of the groundwork in terms of listening to what employees wanted from their digital experiences in the workplace. So we'd already got that sort of, we'd done forums and listening groups and a group-wide survey. So we'd got that insight. I think just picking up on what Tariq said, we just had to be brave. And I remember sitting there, we built a new intranet, a LiveTiles intranet. And I remember sitting there going, I've just got to let it go. I've got to launch it. And it's not 100% perfect. It isn't still today. But you've just got to do your beta version, let it go and see what the feedback is. And I think that's the challenge now, is just as Philip was saying about what we're used to in our consumer experiences with social media and digital technology that we use outside of work. We know that changes at such a pace. The platforms are always launching new features, new ways of engaging with brands. The same, we have to replicate that experience internally. So we really do look to our partners now, like LiveTiles, to give us that insight to say, right, we've done our version A. That was great. What is the data showing us in terms of how our colleagues engaging with it? What's working, what's not? But how do we keep the pace going? How do we keep the momentum going? Because we all want things quicker, easier, seamless. And I think that for me is the next challenge of how do we take the next round of colleague feedback to find our roadmap going forward, because things aren't perfect today. Things are still a little clunky. There's new features that we want to build into our intranet and also integrate our intranet into the rest of the Office 365 ecosystem. So we heavily use Teams now within our business. COVID changed that. We had, a bit like Philip, we had some people using it, some teams using it, but within the sort of the pandemic that really accelerated. But we want to make things seamless. We don't want it to feel like disparate systems like we had before that don't fit together, don't sit together. We want to give colleagues that seamless interaction and journey, that no matter where they are in their engagement within the business, they can move from one platform to another at ease. Because I think that's sometimes where things do lack in the consumer world. If I want to go from Facebook to LinkedIn to Instagram, I have to go to those individual platforms. We've got a great opportunity internally within the colleague experience to sort of break down those barriers across our internal platforms. So that's really the challenge going forward. How do we do that?
Absolutely. So that be where the employees are, be where the colleagues are, make it really seamless, take away the complexity essentially, and bring that human dimension into their digital workplace experience. Philip, you talked about connection earlier on, and I mean the big focus of what we're discussing today is the employee experience. Your challenges were quite immense there. How are you getting on with them? What are you seeing? What are you learning? What can you share with us in terms of really achieving that connection and driving that sort of unity of the workforce forward?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Sorry, Amanda, did you have something to add?
No, you carry on.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dwell on COVID, but it definitely did change how we think about how we communicate and when. And one of the things for us that we had just started doing was changing our internal channel strategy, right? What do you use for what? What do employees use to communicate X, and how do they reach this audience? And it was this whole big thing. And essentially, with COVID, our push messages, the messages that we just simply send to employees increased fourfold, right? You had messages coming from global, then you had messages from your region or your country or your leader. And it became this really kind of paralyzing experience for employees because they were getting so many different things. And one of the things that we were moving to was this pull strategy. So moving from push to pull, which allows our associates, our employees to choose what they want to see, to choose what's relevant to them, which makes for a much better experience. It gives them what they need, what they're interested in. If we could do that successfully, and this is not an overnight thing. Yeah, this takes some time to get leader buy-in and all of that. But essentially, if you can do a better job at giving employees the tools, the keys to tell you what they want as far as relevancy, then you can have all these messages like COVID coming at them, and it's easier for them to compartmentalize this, right? And that's one of the things that, again, accelerated for us. We needed to get people behind this pull mechanism rather than push. And that, for us, is what we were able to achieve with LiveTiles. So our intranet, like I said, gives that overall global strategy, but it allows people to make sure they're seeing what's most important for them. We have, the way our intranet is set up is we have 200 channels. So this allows people to choose different parts of the business. I sit in Basel in Switzerland, so I get to see Basel news. I get to see Swiss news. I get to see Novartis news. But in the US, you don't see that. Of course, you can choose to see it if you want. You can pull those messages in, but they have a different experience, right? And so what we wanted to do is make sure that at the very least, people are getting that type of experience, that personalized relevancy. And it's something that is, like I said, it takes some time and we're doing it well, but it's not an overnight thing. I also wanted to mention that for us, as Amanda was saying, we also adopted this way of thinking with this project. We identified in the beginning what we called an MVP, which is the minimum viable product. And this is for us what we said when we launched this new intranet. It's not going to be amazing and perfect at first. It can't be. There are some people who said we're going to work on this for a year and we're going to launch it. And one day you're going to come to work and everyone's going to have this amazing experience. And we said that's not going to work. It's not realistic. It's not something that we can do. So we said, let's identify our MVP, this minimum product that we want to put out there, and have regular releases, right? So we have monthly releases, just like people have on their devices. You get an update to your apps. People are used to that way of working, right? And it also helps match that external experience. So, and we were very open and honest in our communications to say, listen, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to work for some of you, and it's going to be something that we evolve over time. And people were really receptive to that because it did match what they knew to be true outside, right? We're so used to perfection as a pharmaceutical company, and it's required, Our medicines have to be perfect. But these tools that we create, they don't have to be, They can evolve over time. So it was trying to take that perfectionism mindset and making sure it's really applied to where it needs to be, medicines, and not with these digital tools that can help us change and evolve over time.
So that almost that organic, ever-evolving approach, right? But we're also going back to what Amanda said, we're also tapping into the data and the intel you're getting from the users, your employees, right, in terms of what's working and what isn't. So Tariq, I know in legal in general, you really moved like many companies in the last 12 months, but maybe for you it'll be a longer journey in terms of the hybrid workforce, a lot of colleagues working from home. What for you are the sort of key principles that we need to keep in mind? And like I started off today with the first poll, which is around, you know, hybrid working and working from home or going back to the office. You might be surprised to hear 0% are going back to the office as they always did. 20% are going to go working from home for good, and 80% are going, well, 79% are going to be going that hybrid model, which I believe you're in the midst of. So I'd be really interested to learn and hear from you, what are those key principles and key learning points for the hybrid workforce?
So it's really important to, first of all, set a key set of principles. So your design principles for the colleague or employee experience it's critical. So as you scale your hybrid working, teams have autonomy to then go and build what they need to for their teams to work hybrid, but within a constrained set of principles, so you don't end up with wildly different experiences across the company. So that's key to start with. So we set out a large set of design principles. It could be anything from tone of voice through to look and feel, through to, you know, what are we trying to achieve? Are you being inclusive with your design and accessible, things like that. The second thing is you have to acknowledge, and this is very key in financial services, aren't known for authenticity. We're not the most authentic sector, and I mean, legal in general do a very good job of really promoting authenticity, because it's part of bringing your best self to work and high performing team theory. So we're quite big on that, but what we want to do is try and create authentic experiences which matter to the employees in your team and actually solve real problems, not problems you think need to be solved for your teams, but actually solving real problems. And because of that, you have to identify that not everyone has the same digital capability. I mean, at Legal in General, we've got a workforce full of, you know, different generations, you know, baby boomers through to millennials, and it's such a large workforce. Not everyone knows how to use these digital tools. So you have to really build things in a way that are intuitive, but also solve real problems for these individuals, so they actually use these journeys that you're building. Transferable knowledge, omni-channel, like Philip and Amanda mentioned, are key as well. You need to make sure information is shared across devices, but also for hybrid working to really work, you can't set rules around when work gets done or how work gets done. It's all about performance and delivery and productivity. So you need to forget a lot of those mindsets around that you had around the office and the way teams work, and think about the delivery and only look at the performance of your team holistically and individuals, rather than the micro day-to-day that's going on in the team. So it's really important to shift that culture as well. So outside of the technology, a standard IT division would implement Office 365 and Teams, but what we have to do as a product team is to take all of that technology and start translating it into solving problems, rather than just going, here you go, here's a platform, figure out how it works for you, because that's not going to get the adoption you need on hybrid.
So the change management part of it is really a really massive part. Amanda, I'd like to look a little bit, as we're coming towards the end of the panel, before we take some questions, and I've been keeping an eye on the questions here. I have a couple noted down, but just with an eye to the future, you know, very important part of the digital workplace is that you're already thinking about the future. You're future-proofing your organization, so to speak, in a way that you can adapt and you can change according to the needs. At Jardin Motor Group, what do you think, you know, will be sort of the new ideas that will come to the fore from your experiences in 2020? What are you really looking at as a communications leader in terms of what you want to get out of the digital workplace, or what changes that you want to see? If we were here in 12 months' time, what would you be reporting back to us ideally, do you think?
I think there's a couple of features that we're looking to integrate into the intranet as part of its roadmap, chatbot being one of them. We don't currently have that, and where that comes into play is we had a huge part of the new intranet, which is our policies and processes section. So we're FCA regulated, like any other business. There's regulations that we have to comply with, and there's a huge level of information and documentation and content that our colleagues have to consume. We've got it designed into a lovely library, but actually what we need is it need to make it easier for people to surface information and to find things more readily available to them. So HR policies, ways of working within the dealership environments is something that we're focusing on. And then I think hyper-personalisation is my next real challenge. Sounds like Philip is a step ahead of me on that one, but really about, there is a huge volume of information we put out there as a group, and there's layers to it. So we have our Jardin Motors group messaging, and then we have messaging into the divisions, the brands that we represent, Audi, Mercedes, BMW, and we have to bring all that together. And I think very much because of the volume we want to communicate, there's an element of what is mandatory that people really have got to read at group level, but then what does the employee experience turn to become hyper-personalised interest group? So, you know, we have a colleague culture council who support our sustainability, charity and inclusion strategies. You know, we've got groups of colleagues who are interested in various areas of our business. It's not mandatory for them to be involved in that or want to consume information and content, but how do we start to give people the option to choose what they want to engage with, and then what does that say about driving our culture forward? So I think for me there's some technology work to do, but there's a hyper-personalisation piece to play as well.
Fantastic, and of course the data part will be the real secret sauce there. So I'm hoping we might hear something interesting from our CTO in the next part of the LiveTilesX about that, how data can really support the digital workplace and engage higher levels than before. Philip, in terms of the future in Novartis and your role particularly, what are the big ideas, the big dreams that you have for 2021 based on also real world learnings from this year?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think for me and our team and our product is to really do better with integration with other systems. We do it now, but it could be much better. Yeah, and when I say that, I mean, you know, I want the experience to be when you come onto the homepage, you can see the courses and learning that you've taken, right? Or what's coming up next, or you need to approve vacation time for one of your team members, that lights up and notifies you. For our HR systems, you know, you want to be able to see, I don't know, something that you need to do. And the same thing goes with services, right? I mean, we have an amazing system that shows you, oh, you have a ticket open with the service desk for whatever reason. But let's see the status of it on the homepage, right? And so we do some of these things, but they're not fully baked yet, right? So this is kind of what our next phase is. Our phase 3 of our project is really harnessing the innovations and integrations. That gets fairly technical, so it's not my area of expertise, but we have some really good talented people who can do things like connectors and APIs and all of that. So that to me is our dream in 2021. We also have, which is not led by my team, but this whole notion of the employee experience is percolating throughout Novartis, and we have a group of about 1,000 employees that represent all different divisions, locations, language, and it's called Experience Town. It used to be called User Town, but they've changed it now to Experience Town. And it's basically an online portal application. It's all very cute and animated, and you go to the town hall and you can see you know, new studies, yeah, that you can participate in. And one of them is we just launched a brand new enhanced search tool on our intranet, which is a whole other panel discussion. But essentially, the introduction of this search tool required us to get feedback from like real users, which of course sounds like, you know, that's what you should be doing, but we didn't do that so much, right, in the past. And so this Experience Town gives us a way to have real-time focus groups, to show them images, to show them how things will be, and to have them react to it. And that is just growing and growing. We have 1,000 people now, but I imagine by the end of next year, we'll double that, right? Because it's just, and the thing is, people want to give the feedback. Yeah, they want to say that they have a stake in what we're creating for them and how they consume messages. Yeah, so that's my
Sounds great. I'd love to
2021.
visit Experience Town.
Yeah, it's great.
Maybe it'll be possible at some stage. No, it's really great. So Tariq, in legal in general, what are your big ideas, your big goals for 2021? How are you future proofing?
Yeah, so we're thinking, much to what Amanda mentioned, we're thinking about our people data, our colleague data, the same way you think about our customer data. So essentially building the same infrastructure for our people data as we would customer data, which means augmenting our people data. That's really key for us in 2021. We want everyone to have profiles essentially where we understand exactly, you know, people's aspirations, their skills, their interests, but also all their touch points across the businesses, so we can start talent pooling more laterally rather than vertically. That's a very key concept for us, is to start really drawing in people into projects as and when we need them. We're trying to move more towards that swarm model where we swarm around a problem as an organization rather than in silos. And we can only do that through the people data side of things. And then the 2021 for us is all about the hybrid, as you mentioned. It's what does our new office look like? Physical space merging with digital space. We're doing a lot in that space at the moment. So we're really trying to leverage Office 365, Teams and LiveTiles, for example, to do everything from booking in your car parking space through to being greeted at the front door. What's that like? You know, going into meeting rooms, which are supposed to be now hybrid meeting rooms, so you don't get that issue with where you feel like half your team are in an office and half of your team are at home, and you're getting different experiences or different level of participation and things like that. So we're exploring technology to help with that. We've got immersive technology for town halls that we're trying to bring in as well for certain facilities in the hub workspaces, so that it feels like you're part of the L&G experience. Even if you are at home, you're still feeling that immersive experience. So for us, it's about bringing that hybrid to life. And to Philip and Amanda's points around the concierge, I think it's more like a concierge service that we're labeling it, just to help you with self-service. We want employees now to not be doing all of those tasks that can actually be automated, and we're on a journey there to say, let's free up that portion of your time to actually add value to the organization, and let's try and get into value creation mode. So self-service, hybrid working, and the people data for us.
Fantastic. And that immersive town hall, it's a little bit like Experience Town, maybe. It sounds really interesting, but it's also something a lot of our customers have been coming to us for support in terms of moving from that physical to the digital and providing that same, not just experience, but the identity that employees resonates with employees in the digital space as it would, and you know, in wonderful office like you have in Legal in General in London. So an awful lot to be learned there. I want to go to a couple of questions. So as we're moving towards the end of the panel, I've been taking note of a couple coming in, and I'm going to start with you, Amanda, put you on the spot here. So this is a question that may not surprise you, but particularly in the frame of the accelerated rollout of Teams and other channels, how did you drive adoption?
There's no, I guess, no one single answer on this. I think it depends on your organisational structure. So we're a network of, 56 dealerships all spread geographically. So whilst you can push things down and cascade things using technology, you're actually trying to get people to adopt to that technology in the first place. And what we've done really effectively is recognise, I think as we all do, everyone learns differently. So I don't read a manual. I'm not into that. I need someone to show and tell me how to do things, or I'll watch a video. And we did a huge amount investing in that learning experience to help adoption. So we have an online learning platform called Ollie, which has loads of it's a group-wide initiative. It has all our training modules in there, mandatory and optional ones that people can choose as part of their career development. But we put sort of learning journeys in place to help with the adoption of new technologies. We have a brilliant training team who will go out and do face-to-face. But we also launched an initiative called Digital Ninjas. And our digital ninjas are a group of colleagues who are hugely passionate about technology, new ways of working. They're early adopters to things, and we train them up to be specialists and then deploy them into their localized teams. So in effect, every dealership has a digital ninja, at least one, if not more, depending on the size of the scale of the dealership, of people that they can go to for support, recognizing that some people just want someone to show them how to do something. And then with that, we used other Office 365 channels to support that. So we have a dedicated Yammer channel called Digital Ninjas, where people can post a question and one of the digital ninjas will get back to them. We use a dedicated digital ninja team within Teams, which is just for our digital ninjas to be sharing best practice, self-learning, identifying when new features are being launched across our channels and sort of driving it through that way. So there's no one simple approach. It's about recognizing everyone learns differently and supporting that to get the best adoption.
So quite an extensive tactical plan, if I can put it like that, and a lot of feedback as well in terms of what's working, what isn't. Tariq or Philip, any tips or feedback on how you're driving adoption in Novartis and legal in general?
I might just say that I agree, Amanda, with everything you said, and we've done the same. We have a lot of people who really relate to short, what we call snackable bits of content, so short videos, short overviews. But I also, we shouldn't underestimate the importance of of basically taking away an old tool. Yeah, the best way for us to drive adoption was to actually shut down Skype for Business and just let Teams be there and live there, right? I think we had 30 days overlap to give the stragglers the last a last bit of time, but that's a key point to it, right? Like you can do a lot of adoption in comms, but at the end of the day, a lot of behavior change falls on the individual, the user, to make changes, and in some cases, they need the Band-Aid ripped off quickly. We see the same thing with browsers. We use Internet Explorer, Edge, and Chrome, and it's not really standardized across, and each one of them works differently. And so you have to really, my dream is that we will shut down 2 of those 3 browsers, because then it will give that consistent experience. So things like that. I wouldn't discount taking away tools that aren't needed any longer.
Yeah, I think important. We're talking a lot about innovation and an adoption of new technologies, but it's also extremely important. What do you stop doing? And that's really critical to moving forward as well and being more efficient and effective. Tariq, from your side, anything you want to add there? And I have one more question before we wind up the panel then.
Yes, just quickly, I've used both of those approaches that Philip and Amanda have worked through there. What we do also is part of what we do as product managers is to make sure it's contextual. So adoption is always very contextual to the need. And when you look at some of the world's greatest services, the reasons why they're adopted is because they actually service a real need. And that's where you get the most adoption. So for us is finding people in different divisions and different employee personas and understanding what those needs are, and then working out how we translate that into the platform. So for example, with Teams, it was not just about communicating for some areas of business. It was actually, I can get a line of sight of what's going on productivity wise. I can see all of the tasks in my Microsoft Planner, for example, in Teams, in a team. So it's giving them real use cases to say this is solving a real need for you. Otherwise, we found that we are kind of like sieves really in our human nature. We only kind of retain what we need to know just in that moment. So it was really making sure it's contextual.
Excellent. I'm going to go one last quick round because we're really pressed on time, but it's been a really rich discussion. And this is an important one because we've talked a lot about our employees and users, etc. This one is about how do you get leadership support, or how do you support leaders to help us achieve these goals in the digital workplace. Maybe I'll start quickly with Amanda, then Philip, and then Tariq.
I like the way I always have to go first, Paul. I think for me, you've really got to get buy-in and take them on the journey. And actually, the leadership team can be no different to the rest of the employees. They all learn differently. They will all take to adoption differently. Because we've got the complexity of overlaying group and sort of divisions, we start with the group first approach. And drive it that way. And data is key, really. We are a really email heavy organisation. We rely on email comms a lot. And for me, email should just be a one-to-one piece of communication with a small group, not for group-wide communication. And so we have to change our behaviour and our approach to things like that. And the only way I can really do it is to evidence, to show the leadership team what works, what doesn't. Because when you give them the data and the facts to show, right, we need to change this is not working anymore, and to build the trust of trying something new. And sometimes it's not going to work. Sometimes you have to play around with things to get the most effective results. But the data really is the way that the leadership team, I found in my personal experience, understand why the change is necessary and sort of open their minds then to trying something new.
Excellent.
Yeah, I fully agree. Data is the key there, right? And in order to show them the value, leadership needs to see the numbers. They need to see the data. And when we moved to this pull strategy for our channels from push, it was a whole big uproar because we were saying to them, 90% of people opening an email is less valuable than 5,000 people engaging with a piece of content, commenting on it, sharing it. That's actually much more valuable. And so for leaders, it was like 90% of our people, that's 90,000, 100,000 people. And you're saying that it's not as valuable as 5,000 people actually actively engaging. And the answer is yes, right? And that was like an aha moment for these leaders. But if I didn't have the data, I couldn't show them that, right? So that's absolutely key to do that. Yeah.
Tariq?
Yeah, so I lived this the last 2 years, so it's quite fresh for me. I think it's the first thing is you need to tie the picture right to the shareholder. So the digital workplace isn't just an intranet, it's productivity. So what we're saying is go to leaders and say, we are going to increase the productivity of your teams, which will lead to better experience for customers, which will end up with our shareholders being rewarded greatly. So we had to tie that whole picture together and then talk about productivity, time saving, operational effectiveness, streamlining, self-service. All of those operational savings for us was what drew in that digital workplace. And it was really a mindset shift to say digital workplace isn't just an intranet, it's about making your teams perform better and using data, as Amanda and Philip said, to really justify that.
Fantastic. Guys, Philip, Amanda, Tariq, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing all of this. I feel we could talk for a lot longer, and we might already book you in for the next LiveTilesX to get the progress report and how all your plans are going. And who knows, in 12 months time, we may have the ability to have a physical gathering somewhere, face-to-face gathering. But it's been really, really interesting, rich conversation, lots of common stories around those challenges of evolving the culture into the digital workplace. That leadership part is really, really key, and of course the employee experience. And I really wish you all the best in 2021 in your digital workplace plans. And please stay with us for the second half. I'm hoping our CTO, Patrick Puntener, will maybe have some interesting news around the data and data analytics to help you really drive performance of your digital workplace. So again, I'm sure if we were in an auditorium, we'd be having a large round of applause. So virtually, applause to you all, and thank you so much for joining us and for giving up your time.